I woke up to sunlight I didn't recognize and a silence that felt wrong. 15 months in a coma had erased a year of my life, but nothing prepared me for what waited outside my door. When I finally stood on my porch, cane in hand, my stomach dropped. My private lake, fenced, deeded, and protected, was gone. In its place were umbrellas, towels, screaming kids, and strangers grilling on sand they had trucked in. A sign read, "Community Beach." I hadn't even been home an hour, and the HOA had stolen my land. The doctors warned me recovery would be slow. They didn't warn me about betrayal. As memories came back in flashes, so did the certainty that this lake was mine. I bought it years ago to escape noise, to fish at dawn, to heal after long weeks of work. I paid the taxes. I maintained the shoreline. I locked the gates. Yet here were people laughing where my dock used to be, acting like they belonged. A woman in a visor waved cheerfully when she saw me. "Welcome back," she shouted, as if I were a guest. My hands shook. I asked who authorized this. She pointed to a laminated notice taped to a cooler. HOA Temporary Reclamation for Community. Use temporary reclamation words, chosen to sound legal while hiding theft. According to the notice, my absence constituted abandonment. According to the HOA, my coma was convenient. I went inside and sat down, breathing through the anger. I pulled my deed from the safe, the surveys, the correspondence. Every document said the same thing: private property. No easement, no shared access, no authority. The HOA had counted on one thing: that I wouldn't come back, or that I'd be too weak to fight. By sunset, the beach was louder. Music thumped. A bonfire crackled. Someone parked a golf cart on my grass. That's when resolve cut through the fog. I might have lost 15 months, but I hadn't lost my spine. If they wanted a public beach, they were about to learn the difference between noise and ownership, between bullying and law. I stepped back onto the porch and took a photo. Then another. Evidence first. Action next. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. I knew the HOA thrived on confusion, speed, and fear, and I would give them none. Tomorrow I would call my attorney, the county recorder, and the sheriff. I would post notices, secure the gates, and restore the shoreline. Every laugh on that sand would become a receipt. Every footprint would be documented. They mistook my absence for surrender. They mistook recovery for weakness. They were wrong, and the fight would be quiet, methodical, and devastatingly effective, starting at sunrise with cameras, permits, and resolve. Morning came with pain in my joints and clarity in my mind. Recovery had taught me patience, and patience had taught me precision. I started with the county records office. The clerk confirmed what I already knew. My lake was privately owned, clearly surveyed, with no recorded easements or HOA rights. She raised an eyebrow when I described the community beach. "That's not temporary," she said. "That's trespass." Next was my attorney, a man who disliked bullies and loved paperwork. He asked one question: "Did you give permission?" I hadn't. He smiled thinly. "Then they're in trouble." We drafted a cease and desist, referenced statutes, and attached copies of my deed. He warned me the HOA would posture. They always do. They rely on intimidation, not law. By noon, I returned home with posted notices and stakes. The beach was already alive again. Coolers, towels, kids running toward the water. I planted signs at every access point. Private property, no. Trespassing. Violators will be removed. Filmed myself placing them, narrating calmly, stating the date and time. Documentation mattered. So did tone. The HOA president arrived shortly after, flanked by 2 board members and a uniformed security guard they hired for effect. She spoke loudly, for the crowd. "You can't do this." The board voted. I asked for the recorded easement. She didn't have one. I asked for written consent. She waved a packet labeled Emergency Use Authorization. Emergency for whom? She said the community needed recreation. I said need didn't transfer title. She threatened fines. I smiled and handed her the cease and desist. Her confidence cracked. The guard shifted his weight. Someone whispered. The president pivoted to compassion. "We thought you weren't coming back." That sentence did more damage than she realized. I told her my medical condition was not a loophole. I told her the lake would be closed immediately. When they refused to leave, I called the sheriff's non-emergency line. Calm voice, clear facts, ownership verified, trespass ongoing. While we waited, I continued filming. The crowd grew uneasy. A few families packed up, others booed. The president accused me of cruelty. I accused her of theft. The deputy arrived, reviewed documents, and asked a simple question. "Do you have permission to be here?" Silence answered. He ordered the area cleared. Umbrellas folded. Music stopped. Anger replaced laughter. The president promised this wasn't over. I agreed. As the last footprints faded, I locked the gate and sat by the water. The fight had shifted. They'd lost the beach, but they wouldn't stop. HOAs rarely do. They would escalate with fines, letters, and votes. That was fine. I had time, records, and the law. And tomorrow, I would learn how far they were willing to go, and how far I would let them. The letters started the next morning. Certified envelopes stamped urgent, slid through my mail slot like threats wrapped in stationery. The HOA fined me for denying community access, then for unauthorized signage, then for disrupting shared amenities. They billed me for security they hired, for sand removal they hadn't done yet, for administrative review. Each fine carried late fees, stacked like interest on intimidation. It was a classic tactic. Bury me in paper, exhaust me, make me settle. I didn't. I cataloged everything. I built a binder. Tabs, dates, screenshots, receipts. I recorded every interaction. I saved voicemails. I replied once through my attorney, disputing all fines and demanding proof of authority. The response was bluster. The president CC'd the entire neighborhood, framing me as the villain who stole joy from families. Comments piled on. Some were cruel. Others were cautious. A few asked a dangerous question. If the lake was private, how did this happen? That question mattered. I requested the HOA's meeting minutes and financials, documents members were entitled to see. What came back was revealing. No vote authorized a beach. No legal opinion approved access. Expenses were coded vaguely. Sand was purchased using community improvement. Funds without scope or approval. Security was paid cash. The emergency they cited? A summer heat wave and a desire for amenities. Desire isn't law. I shared the documents carefully with homeowners who asked, not online, one-on-one, quietly. Explained that if the HOA could seize my property during a coma, they could bend rules anywhere. Fines rose, confidence wavered. Then the HOA escalated. They filed a lien notice, invalid, but alarming, hoping the word alone would scare me. It didn't. My attorney responded with a demand for retraction and notice of damages. We filed a complaint with the county for misuse of funds and improper encumbrance. The temperature changed. Suddenly emails were shorter, threats softened into requests. One evening, a neighbor knocked. He apologized. He said he'd believed the president when she claimed she had permission. He asked if the kids could fish someday, with consent. I told him yes, someday under rules with respect. Word spread. The crowd thinned. The HOA's support eroded. They tried one last move. A special meeting to amend bylaws retroactively. I attended, cane and all, and asked a single question into the microphone. Can bylaws override recorded deeds? Silence. Their attorney shook his head. The motion failed. As I left, the president avoided my eyes. Power thrives on ambiguity, and ambiguity had died under fluorescent lights. The lake was quiet again, but the reckoning wasn't finished. There were consequences to calculate, and accountability to demand. The reckoning didn't arrive with sirens or shouting. It came with envelopes, subpoenas, and a calendar full of dates the HOA couldn't dodge. My attorney filed for declaratory judgment to end the nonsense permanently. We sought damages for trespass, property damage, and harassment. The county auditor opened an inquiry into the HOA's spending. Insurance. Adjusters asked careful questions about sand removal and shoreline restoration. Quiet systems began to grind. The HOA president tried to negotiate, privately. She suggested an easement, a shared-use schedule, a plaque with my name on it. I declined. Ownership isn't a favor. Consent can't be coerced. She warned me about neighbor relations. I reminded her that trust had already been burned, along with my grass. Depositions were less dramatic than movies, but more devastating. Board members contradicted each other. Receipts didn't match minutes. Cash payments lacked approvals. The emergency justification fell apart under oath. When asked why they didn't seek court permission while I was incapacitated, no one had a good answer. Convenience is not necessity. Restoration began while the case moved forward. Contractors hauled away sand. Native plants were replanted. Fencing was repaired. I documented progress and costs. Each invoice added weight. The lake returned to itself, still, private, patient. The HOA's insurer pushed for settlement. They didn't like open-ended exposure. The terms were straightforward. A formal acknowledgement of my exclusive ownership, a permanent injunction against access, reimbursement for restoration and legal fees, and removal of the president from her role. It took 2 votes and a resignation letter to get there. The board accepted. At the final meeting, a new president apologized publicly. He promised transparency and restraint. I accepted the apology without celebration. This wasn't victory. It was correction. Systems had failed. People had overreached. Consequences had arrived. On my porch that evening, the lake reflected the sky like nothing had happened. That's the danger of calm. It hides the work required to protect it. I installed cameras and upgraded gates. I wrote clear policies for guests. I offered limited, permitted fishing days for neighbors who asked respectfully. Power, when exercised carefully, can heal. The lawsuit closed. Checks cleared. Notices were recorded. The lake stayed quiet. Recovery taught me something unexpected. Absence invites appropriation, and return demands clarity. I hadn't fought for revenge. I'd fought for the simple truth that ownership means responsibility. Not exclusion by default, but consent by choice. The neighborhood adjusted. Kids waved from bikes. The water lapped at the dock. Life resumed on honest terms. A year after I returned, the lake finally sounded like itself again. No music thumping across the water. No shouted arguments. Just wind, birds, and the soft ripple against the dock. Silence, I learned, isn't emptiness. It's the result of boundaries being respected. The HOA didn't collapse after the settlement, but it changed. Committees were reduced. Budgets were published. Votes were documented. People asked questions they'd never asked before. The new president stopped by once, not to negotiate, but to listen. He wanted to know how things had gone so wrong. I told him the truth. Power drifts when no one is watching, and absence creates opportunity for people who confuse authority with ownership. My recovery continued in small, unglamorous steps. Physical therapy, short walks, mornings by the water with a fishing rod I didn't always use. The lake became part of healing again, not a battlefield. Sometimes neighbors waved from the road. Sometimes they didn't. Either was fine. Peace doesn't require approval. I kept everything documented anyway, not because I expected another fight, but because memory fades. Mine had vanished once without warning. I refused to let records disappear too. The deeds stayed scanned and backed up. The cameras stayed on. Boundaries stayed clear. One afternoon, a kid knocked with his father. They asked if they could fish for an hour. I said yes. We talked about rules, respect, and leaving things better than you found them. They thanked me and did exactly that. Choice mattered. Consent mattered. That was the difference between a community and a crowd. Looking back, the coma had taken 15 months, but it had also revealed something uncomfortable. While I was gone, people decided what they wanted mattered more than what was right. They dressed it up in paperwork and called it good intentions. It wasn't. It was convenience. And convenience is dangerous when left unchecked. The lake taught me patience long before any of this happened. Water waits. It doesn't argue. It simply remains, reflecting whatever stands before it. When the beach appeared, the lake didn't protest. When it vanished, the lake didn't celebrate. It endured. That's what I tried to do. Endure long enough to respond correctly. I don't tell this story to warn people about HOAs alone. I tell it because ownership, health, and time are fragile. You can lose any of them suddenly. What protects you isn't anger or volume. It's clarity, preparation, and the willingness to act calmly when others expect you to fold.